Thanks for tuning in. I've got something a bit different. Nobody can accuse me on my channel of not being creative. Well, okay, so this poor fellow that you can see on the screen, he's Australian, he lives in Perth in Australia, and he has got a YouTube channel going, basically like a kind of vlog on his fight against cancer. He's been terminally diagnosed and he makes a video every now and again. In his latest video, he said all his tests came back really bad, his blood tests, and he's been given, I don't know, 3 or 4 months to live. And what can I say? It's a terrible shame. But the reason I'm making this video is that he does talk a bit about religion, and I thought it would be interesting to listen to what he's got to say about his religious beliefs. Now, he's made a video called with the title "My Views on Religion," so we're going to listen to some of what he's got to say, maybe compassionately comment, because look, you know, I mean, I hope I haven't got cancer. I don't believe I've got cancer. I don't believe I'm dying. I think I've got probably 20 years left in me, hopefully. But this poor chap is 52. He is dying and he's had all the bad news, and he's somehow managing to cope with it by telling his story. So let's listen with compassion, but with some sort of critical thinking to what he's got to say about religion.
Just language in it, like "you are in my prayers" and things like that.
Yeah, okay. So he's talking about people leaving messages on his channel, and obviously there are religious people leaving positive messages for them. "You're in my prayers, I'll pray for you," etc. And he's telling his attitude to that.
So I just want to lay all the cards out on where I stand on religion, just so that we can have a really good time of this. I love those comments. Please keep those comments going and keep them relevant to you. So if you are of the Christian belief and you want to say, "I will pray to Jesus for you," say that. If you're Buddhist and you say, "I will pray to Buddha for you," I'm fine with that too. I'm fine with all religions that are okay and tolerant of other religions. So to give you an example of a religion I would not be cool with is a religion that says you're either one of us or you're lost, you're the enemy.
Oh, I can't help laughing at that, because I mean that's really exactly what most colors of Christianity actually do. That you're either saved by Jesus or you're not, and that's exactly what Christianity does. Islam too, really. That's what most of the religions do.
I don't dig those religions. They tend to be extremist fundamental religions. And when I say that, I don't want you to hear fundamental Christian only, because fundamental Christians, man, they've got some problems. But fundamental Jews, fundamental Muslims, fundamental Buddhists.
You see, fundamental Christians, they're the ones who at least be honest and say you're going to go to hell unless you have got Jesus as your salvation. At least they're being honest. Those who are not fundamentals will be saying, "Oh, don't worry, because, you know, we're Christians, but God is compassionate. He'll find a way." Well, not according to the Bible. So you're misrepresenting your religion. But anyway, let's listen to more.
Any of those that say, if you're not one of us, you're lost and you're a bad person, I'm not cool with them. Apart from that, and that, you know, what I'm talking about there is maybe, I don't know, 2% of religions are the bad ones. There's probably 98% of religions I'm totally fine with. And to put it into one sentence, I'm fine with tolerant religions, okay? Now, in terms of my own religious experience...
That's funny, because if you look at surveys of Christians generally, what they feel about, say, trans issues and that kind of thing, you'll find actually it's not 2% that say, "Oh, you know, we're against trans rights, we don't think it's right. We like men to be men and women to be women," etc. You'll find that the percentages are much higher than that. Certainly far higher than 2%. So we're talking about religions that may tolerate other religions, but they don't tolerate other, you know, sort of benign lifestyles.
I grew up in a Christian family in Perth, Western Australia.
Yeah, sorry, I should say not just benign lifestyles, but facts about the trans issues and that kind of thing, biological facts, and the whole facts around trans issues, basically homosexuality as well.
Particularly the sub branch of Christianity was Uniting Church, and the sub branch of Uniting Church was Methodist. And even then, you can see that Christianity is not as simple as Christianities. There are nations and states and nationalities within what we call Christian. So I grew up in a Christian family, both my mother and father.
Okay, I'm just going to skip this bit because we don't really need the preamble. We need to find out what his beliefs are. Let's just go ahead in the video a bit and see what we can get past.
All right, Paul, you're old enough to make your own decision.
Okay, yeah. So he said how his mum's a Christian, and his mum said, "You want to keep going to Sunday school?" He said no. She was upset, and they reached a compromise. He's going to go to church at Easter and Christmas. So that was the compromise.
Do you want to keep?
Yeah,
that was that happy compromise that we found. So then you have to wonder, why wasn't it that I didn't carry on with my Christian journey? And the reason was, and by the way, I'm just speaking my own.
Okay, well, let's cut to the chase. I'll tell you what he says, because he's going to ramble a bit. He says he's got a very scientific mind, he's got a very critical mind, etc., etc. He also said that he did an acid trip, and it really blew his mind, opened things up for him. And I got quite annoyed, actually, because in his video he actually says the title is "My Views on Religion," and I thought that this video would summarize his views on religion, which, quite frankly, I know what they are because I've done the research. I mean, it could be stated very, very quickly and easily. They don't need any preamble. So he's actually referred the viewer to a website where he's published short stories. He's got 12 parts, and he said if you want to learn about all the background, read the first 11 parts. But my actual beliefs are in number 12. So okay, I went and did the research. I wouldn't normally, but I wanted to make a video on this because I think it's quite arrogant to do a video on your religious views and then say go and read a short story I've written. I've written short stories too. I wouldn't waste your guys' time with reading my short stories in order to discover my religious views. I'll just tell you what they are. So I know he's dying of cancer, but I did get annoyed with him when he misrepresented his video and he said, go off and read this story. Okay, well, I read the story. We're going to have a look at it. We're not going to hear anything more from this guy. I hope he gets better. I hope he's one of the, stage 4s that goes into remission. But anyway, that's besides the point. So let's just go and have a look and see what he's got to say in his story. Okay, yeah, so you missed the bit of the video where I just cut it short there. First of all, he was saying, oh, this is about me because your truth is your truth and my truth is my truth. For me, well, not for me, but let's face it, religion is about ultimate reality. What is real and what is the ultimate truth that applies to everybody. And there is no such thing in a religious context of my truth, your truth, John's truth, Sally's truth, because a religion make claims about ultimate objective reality. So, well, that's nonsense. But he also says he's got an analytic mind, he's got a scientific mind, he's good at critical thinking. Okay, well, let's put that to the test. So in this story that he wrote, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. We'll just cut to the chase. We'll go to the relevant parts. So he describes this trip, this acid trip that he had, and he saw all sorts of weird stuff and, well, what have you. He had some big experience. And then he moves on to, okay, so then he says, are you familiar with Newton's first law of thermodynamics? Actually, was it Newton that coined the term thermodynamics? I thought that came later. But okay, well, let's just set that aside. So first law of thermodynamics, whether it's Newton or not. So he says the law states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Okay, fair enough. It can merely be converted. The sum of all energy in the entire universe is a fixed, unchangeable amount. Okay, that's fine. So what? For example, when you turn on a light bulb, you are converting electrical energy into light and heat energy. If you add up the sum total of universe energy before and after you turn on the light bulb, then the amount is identical in all cases. Actually, I thought I'd read in this book I was reading on physics that, okay, forget that. Sorry, forget it. Okay, all right, so I'm on board with what he's saying so far. That's science. Let's move on. Now let's just imagine for a moment if the same thing applied to consciousness. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I mean, the first law of thermodynamics applies to energy in the universe. Um, Consciousness is something different. Consciousness is, what we sort of refer to as this sort of sense of awareness that the brain creates of the self, and the experience of all the emotions and everything, sensory experiences through this awareness that we've got. That's not really anything that could be equated to the energy that's in the universe, is it? But so he's making an analogy. Let's just imagine for a moment if the same thing applied to consciousness. Well, that's a big if. He's taking a law about the physical universe there, and he's applying it to consciousness, which is a kind of fairly nebulous label that we've applied to something that we still don't really fully understand. Neuroscience is very, very far from understanding how the brain actually makes this consciousness or awareness. Okay, let's go on. There is a fixed amount of consciousness in the universe. All right, well, hold on a minute. There is a fixed amount of consciousness in the universe. That means that the amount of consciousness in the universe now is exactly the same as has always existed all the way back to the beginning of the Big Bang. In other words, before human beings existed, before there was life on Earth, he's claiming that the amount of consciousness then, before there was life on Earth, is the same then as it is now. Well, prove it. I mean, how could that be? If consciousness is only emerging from living beings, and there were no living beings on Earth billions of years ago, then how could there have been consciousness? He's making a claim there, and I don't know how he could prove that. He's just way out. He's just way out of it. He's way out of his depth. He's being so irrational. He's making claims that he can't prove. I would just say prove it. Well, first of all, it's a big if. How do you know that this first law of thermodynamics the principle can also be applied to consciousness? How do you know that? Prove it. Yeah, and this thing about the amount of consciousness is fixed. Well, that's a claim, and again, prove it. Okay, so he says when you are born, you get a small amount of that global consciousness embodied within you. Right, well, there's another claim. So he's talking about consciousness as if it's something which is coming from a source outside of the human being. And yeah, I admit, I've heard this from people who believe in what we atheists call woo, that there's this, that basically the universe is conscious, or is consciousness, or there is consciousness somewhere out there, like some big ocean of consciousness in the ether, which when you're born, zip, it kind of moves into you. You've got this consciousness when you're born. It's not something which emerges from the biology of a person, but it's something that comes from outside of you. This, to me, is going into a kind of batshit crazy territory that Christianity goes almost as much. I mean, not far off it, quite frankly. I mean, it's almost as absurd as the whole idea of salvation. It's really that far out there. Okay, when you die, you give it back. The sum total is always the same. The only difference is where allotments of consciousness are at any given moment. Okay. That's what I got from that trip. In other words, the acid trip. That's what he concluded. Well, how did you conclude that? I mean, how did you draw the connection from altered mind state to all of that? No, I think what's happened is you've had this trip, you've been reading around, and you've read some Alan Watts, you've read some Deepak Chopra, and you've kind of pasted them together, haven't you? It's look, I understand the guy's dying. It's a coping mechanism. But be that as it may, even if what he says is true, your consciousness, let's say it goes into it goes back to where it came from, and then it goes into another body when it's born. It's not going to be you, because you won't take any of your memories with you. You will never see the light of day again. It will be another pair of eyes looking out from a biological body with this essence, this soul, or whatever you want to call it, this piece of consciousness which is eternal and which will continue to exist to the end of time. Okay, so he says he grew up in a Christian household. Christianity didn't gel with me. Yeah, but Wu does gel with him. Okay. And then he says something else which I think that, yeah, he says, okay, he says there are no atheists in foxholes. Yeah, and he says somewhere that there are two things he's certain of. One is he exists, and second is there are no atheists in foxholes. Well, I mean, Christopher Hitchens died of cancer, and he remained steadfastly an atheist, and not only that, not believing Wu all the way into the end. He believed that his death would be absolute, and I hope that I will get to the end of my life believing that as well and just accepting it. Okay, so he's saying here, as I sit here waiting for a clear diagnosis on my cancers, I am in the definition of an existential crisis. Any of those cancers could kill me within 4 months. Yeah, and he's saying that if you're in this existential crisis, you need this, you need to believe in some kind of transcendent reality. He says, I don't know all the answers, but I do know two things for sure. I exist and there are no atheists in foxholes. I mean, how is that relevant? Well, he's apologizing for the fact that he's appealing to life beyond death, I think. You know, he's apologizing, but there are atheists. There are atheists in foxholes, we know, and it's not true that there are no atheists in foxholes. And then he goes on to talk about virtual reality and artificial intelligence, the Matrix, follow the right white rabbit, knock knock Neo, and he's just going into weird sort of territory there. Okay, well, I've got nothing more to analyze on this guy. I feel sorry for him. He's dying of cancer. He's resorted to Wu, to looking at what's beyond, and I can't blame him really, but he's not being scientific, he's not being analytical, he's being irrational. But I do wish him the best, and I do hope he's one of those that goes into remission, but based on his recent blood test results, it doesn't look as though he will be. I was going to leave a message for him on this page. I don't think I will. I don't want to ruin his illusion and his delusions. I'll just leave him with that because I don't want to take that comfort away from him. So I'm going to leave it there. Okay, let me know what your thoughts are. Bye for now.